On the call today, we have Maggie Roby, who is an Assistant Chief of Licensing. We have Julie Pickerel, who is Chief of Licensing. And then we have Jesse Winter, Public Information Liaison. If you're familiar with chat, or Zoom rather, you're going to want to follow the chat. Jesse is going to be throughout the entire meeting adding additional information inside of the chat to provide links, different content. If you're asking questions, we'll field them from there. Otherwise, you're welcome to also unmute yourself and just ask the question. The purpose of this meeting, as I said at the outset, is it's to provide you some information as it relates to filling out a application for a license for obtaining the ability to perform construction work as a business inside the state of Arizona. It's also to provide you with access to staff who are actually working within the licensing department so that you can ask any questions you have, and we'll be able to provide any answer or all the answers that you may have here in the call or through follow-up. All right, so before we get started, and I've already muted everybody, but if you haven't muted yourself, please do. Unless you have a question, then feel free to unmute yourself, as I said. And finally, just a reminder, the video or this meeting will be recorded, and we'll send you a recording of the video. Big takeaways. Maggie's going to talk about it here in a minute, but over 90% of applicants are filing their new license application through our online portal. We would welcome you to do the same. So one thing we want to make sure is that you're comfortable using our website and the online portal. It's whenever you're first initially signing up for it, it may be a bit cumbersome, but we'll take you through exactly how to sign up and make sure that you're able to, with ease, get into the portal. The biggest thing that we're going to concentrate on in this meeting is the common errors or deficiencies that we see in applications, and we're gonna highlight them, and we're going to talk about how you can avoid them. And then finally, we're again here to answer any questions you may have, and really show to you that we're not a government body that is in an ivory tower just looming over. We're here. We're happy to answer any questions. Give us a call. If we can answer it, we will, and if we can't, then we'll get back to you on the answer. All right. So, Miss Maggie.
All right, so we are going to go over some common application errors that we have. On this slide, you can see we have the top 5 common errors that are found in your application. The first one being the bond, so errors within the bond form that you are submitting. Second being the QP experience, so a lack of detail in the description of the experience history, as well as an IDs, so either not submitting them for either one or more person who are named on the application, testing, statutes and rules exam, and or the trade exam is not submitted. Those exams do need to be included with the application when you submit it. And then the last one being background checks, so either not submitted or not submitted within that 90-day time frame.
And you guys are going to be familiar with this. This is the sales tactic anyone will use. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I told you I was going to tell you, and then I'm telling you what I told you. So this is our preemptive slide to tell you exactly what we're going to be talking about. These are the top 5 deficiencies. So the next a lot of slides are going to be covering how to avoid these deficiencies and what we actually need in our license application from you.
So as Jim said, 90% of our applications we are receiving through our online portal. So we strongly encourage you to use this online portal. This is the fastest way for you to get your documents to us. Once you are logged in and you have created your account, and you have submitted your application and have your license, you can also go back in and submit other items in regards to your license. So we're primarily going to focus on this method of using the portal throughout this this seminar, but there are two other options as well that you can submit an application, and that would be by mailing it in. The PO box is listed on our website, also on the application form. And then we do take in-person appointments. We do suggest that you call to schedule that appointment with us so that one, we can make sure that you have all the documents that you need, and two, to make sure that somebody is in the office and waiting for you to accept those documents.
Yeah, and the appointment only is temporary with the pandemic, and actually, it's kind of noteworthy. I was checking our old records yesterday, and it was April 5th whenever we moved to appointment only in 2020. So we've now been officially doing it for 1 year. But we are talking about ending that and being able to return to the office, so full time for all of us. So that that appointment only is probably going to change depending on when you're actually planning on applying for the license. But just check our website whether you need to have an appointment or whether you can just stop by. So if you're using the portal, Maggie's going to tell you exactly what information you should gather before you even sit down to attempt to create the required accounts.
Yeah. So when you're creating your portal account, you're going to need the authorized representative's information. So that's going to include their name, their date of birth, a valid email address, their preferred method of contact, and then you will select security questions that are used if for some reason you forget your password and it needs to be reset. You will also need your business entity's information. So the type of entity it is it an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, or a sole proprietorship? And then the name of your company or the name of the sole proprietor and partners, your Arizona Corporation Commission file number if it's an LLC or corporation, again, a valid email address, your physical business address, and a phone number. So we do want to note that some of this information does appear on the ROC's website, and that's going to include your business address, your phone number, the name of your qualifying party and the personnel on the license, as well as your bond coverage.
Okay, so to get to our portal, you'll just go to roc.az.gov, and it is under My Account. You'll click that button, and it'll take you to. You'll see the following screen here. It'll play automatically, I think, and it'll take you through exactly how to set up a portal account. And then we'll talk about
In this video, you'll learn how to create an account for the ROC Online Customer Portal.
Can everyone hear it?
To create an account, visit www.roc.az.gov and click the My Account menu option. In the drop-down box next to the question, "Do you have an account already?" select the "No, I need to register" option and fill in your information below. The personal information you enter should be your full legal name and date of birth as it appears on your government-issued ID. When choosing security questions and answers, make sure to choose something that will be easy for you to remember. After clicking the Register for the Customer Portal button, you will need to confirm your email account before you can log in. Check your email and look for an email from Arizona Registrar of Contractors. If you do not see the email in your inbox, please check your spam folder. In the email, please click the link to confirm your email and finish registering for your account. The link will return you to the ROC website. Next, click the Go to the ROC Customer Portal button, where you will be able to log into your ROC Online Customer Portal account with the email address and password you previously selected.
Okay, so the very next video, what we're going to show you is how to connect an existing business to that account that you've just created. So basically what you've done so far is create an account that works within our system. Now that you need to link your existing business to that account. So that's what this video is going to show you.
In this video, you will learn how to connect an existing license and business to your ROC online customer portal account. Once logged in, you can add the business entity to that account by going to the Licenses and Accounts button from the dashboard. On the Licenses and Accounts page, follow the steps and add the business entity. When searching for your business entity, do not add any punctuation, and less is more. You only need to type a couple of words to find your business name. As you can see from this example, the business name I'm searching for is ZZZ John ROC Test Account. But I only need to search for ZZZ John to find my business. You can contact the licensing rep to ask for more information.
Okay, so it's that easy. Where you're going to run into trouble is if you've not created your business account or your business entity yet with CorpCom. We do link directly to Arizona Corporation Commission. So that's where those search results were coming from. So if you've not created your business entity first, then you're not going to be able to obviously find it to connect it to the account. And that is something that you would have to do before you applied for a license in the first place. So there you go. All right. So after you've created your business account and connected it through the portal, Maggie's going to take you through exactly how to apply for a license.
Yeah, so the registrar issues licenses to business entities, not to individuals. So applying business entities can be sole proprietorships, partnerships, LLCs, corporations, or trusts. So you will need to identify the applying entity type. Regardless of how you submit your application, you do need to identify that with us as well. So for sole proprietorships or partnerships, the name of the entity is going to be exactly as it appears on the government ID. For corporations or LLCs, it will be the name exactly as it is filed with the Arizona Corporation Commission. And then with trust, it will be exactly as it appears on the trust certificate. So it's important to know sole proprietorships and partnerships need to have that government issue ID. It has to match exactly.
Yeah. So this is Maggie's pointing out that we issue licenses to businesses. This is opposed to, like, I'm from Ohio. Our licensing, their scheme there is usually on the local level, and it's individuals. So my brother is part of a union, and he as an individual is qualified to perform the work, whereas here in Arizona, we license businesses, and any bona fide or legitimate employee of that business would not also need to be licensed separately. So it is the business that obtains the license and holds the license. Any employee would not also need to be licensed.
We do have a question in the chat. What about a company with a DBA linked to an LLC?
Sure. Maggie?
Yeah, so actually we're going to go over DBAs right now. So you can contract under a DBA only if it is a ROC approved name. So for instance, an LLC can also include in their application their DBA. That will need to be listed, like I said, on the application and included on the bond as well. So we do recommend, but we don't require that you file the DBA with the Secretary of State. And also your DBA cannot reference or suggest a scope of work that is not included in the scope of your license. The DBA, like I said, needs to be included on the bond, and we will cover bonds a little bit later. Also, your DBA name cannot include LLC or Inc. at the end of it. So your DBA can be changed also or removed at any time by submitting a name change request form along with a new bond.
Great, thanks, Maggie. We do have a question from Moms too. Can it be from out of state, the LLC or business entity? Yes. So if you look at two messages above, with Jesse posted, what it's called is you're going to need to file a grants authority to foreign corporations to transact business in this state. So it's foreign authority to transact business in the state of Arizona is what you would be filing with this Arizona Corporation Commission. So just to break it down real quick for you, Arizona Corporation Commission is the official business repository in the state. So if you have a LLC or a corporation, you would need to register with them. When we're recommending you register your name with Arizona or Arizona Secretary of State, that's if you're a partnership or a sole proprietorship. That's where you would go to register your name there, so that it's actually somewhat protected by having it listed somewhere. The only other thing I was going to mention on this slide is we're, as an agency, not in the name business. What we care about with your DBA is that it is not suggesting work that is outside the scope of your license. So if you are a plumbing contractor under Jim Nupp LLC, and again, I'm a plumbing contractor, I can't have a DBA, DBA Electrical Services Arizona. It's just, you can't have a DBA that suggests, or a name for that matter, that suggests you're performing work outside of the scope of your license. If you have a plumbing and an electrical license, then that's a different story, and we would allow that DBA to go through. But that's the extent of how much we are going to regulate the name for your DBA. Cool. Miss Maggie.
So which license classification are you going to apply for? So we do have quite a few different license classifications that cover many different scopes of work. If you have not already identified which license classification covers your scope of work, there's a couple different options as far as figuring out which classification best fits for you. So it's really important to know your license classification, because this is going to determine, what examinations you need to take, the amount of your bond, and your fees. So you can visit our website. We do have a license classification page that lists out the different classifications that we do hold. There is also a license classification requirements form that is a reference that will kind of show you, what are the requirements for each specific license. If you get to our website and you still cannot figure out which classification best fits your scope of work, then we would suggest that you submit a scope determination request form. And what that does is that just provides us with some information as far as your scope of work. And then the licensing management team kind of does an overview of that, and we would issue you a determination letter of the scope that best fits your work. So we do offer residential, commercial, or dual license classifications. There is the general contracting, the specialty, and engineering as well.
Yeah, we do have a question from Marie regarding sewer storm systems for new housing tracts, whether that's going to be residential or commercial. Julie, if you can't answer that, I'm going to just have you follow up with her, or Maggie follow up with her. Okay, it looks like we're going to follow up with you on that. Yeah, well, just Julie, or Jesse rather, if you could just throw Julie's contact information in the chat again, we'll, Marie, if you want to follow up, then we'll get you an answer to it, because we just sometimes on the scopes have to check with the compliance department as to what their interpretation of the scopes are.
Yeah, so Next up is going to be our qualifying party requirements. So when you are submitting your application for a license, you will need to identify who the qualifying party will be for the license. So the qualifying party is the person who is regularly employed by the applicant and is actively engaged in the classification of work for which the person qualifies on behalf of the applicant. So the QP needs to have the necessary experience, the knowledge, and the skills to supervise or perform the work. So one thing that they're going to need is their exams. So all of our exams are administered by PSI. Everybody will have to take and pass the Arizona Statutes and Rules exam. Then the trade exam is specific to the specific classifications. Again, you can look at that license classification requirements sheet to see which trade exam you would be required to take and pass. The exams must be dated as passed within 2 years that we received the license application. You must pass your exams by at least 70%. And there are waivers that can be submitted to waive those exams, and we will cover those on another slide as well. The QP also needs to submit their experience history. So this is going to include a detailed description of the duties that were either supervised or performed. And this is important to note because you want to make sure that you cover the classification that you are applying for. We also ask you to provide us with some references as well on the application. You also will need to submit to us your ID. This should be a valid and legible government issued ID, as well as a background check. That's a big one. Your background check needs to be within 90 days from when we receive the application. Some other items that you will provide to us is social security number, address, phone number, email, and if you own any percentage of ownership.
Yeah, so what we're highlighting the top 5 here with being deficiencies on an application, just very quickly to go through them. Statute or the exams in general, what we see often is that they just haven't been taken or that they're taken over 2 years ago. Experience history, it's not detailed enough. If you're applying for a dual license, we do need you to give examples of both residential and commercial work. Often if you're applying for a dual, then you're just providing one or the other. So that's one of the issues we see. Otherwise, I like to think of the experience as being like a normal private sector resume. You're providing the dates of work, the hours worked per week, position you held, so your title, and then detailed description of your duties. Yeah, driver's license, what we have there as an issue is, and we'll cover it a little bit after Maggie talks about who all is required to be listed on a license, but often what we see with driver's licenses or government issued IDs is that they're just not valid anymore, that they're expired. And then background checks, it's the same issue as driver's licenses or IDs. They're just not submitted for everyone who should have submitted them. And we'll get a little bit more into that as we go along.
Before we move on, we do have a question regarding just the experience description. Will a contractor's license from another state suffice for experience?
Yes. So Moms too, as well as Lane is asking, these are waiver questions. We're getting into that right now. So if after Maggie covers those 2 slides, we don't answer the question, by all means, let us know. My biggest holdup on getting licensed is memorizing statutes and lots of tedious time frames to remember. Eric, we're working on that. So we're actually turning the statute and rules exam into a computer-based training exam. Our honest opinion is you're in the construction contracting business. You're not in the Arizona statute business. we should be telling you the important statutes to you and your license, and we should not be just handing you a book and saying good luck. So we're with you. We're just not there yet. We're expecting that to be launched by the end of the year. September 9th is our vendor's deadline. So we're getting there. We understand that's an issue, and we tend to agree with you. That doesn't change statutes requiring you to take the test, though. So you're welcome to wait, or you're welcome to try and memorize those statutes. Now, Miss Maggie, waivers.
Yeah. So exam waivers. So the statutes and rules exam can be waived if the qualifying party was named on an Arizona license within the past 5 years. The trade exam can also be waived for in-state applicants if the qualifying party was named on an Arizona license of the same classification within the last 5 years. For those of you who are out-of-state applicants, the statutes and rules exam right now cannot be waived. You will have to take that exam. And then the trade exam can be waived if the qualifying party was named on a comparable license within the past 5 years. And you will submit the verified waiver from your out-of-state licensing board or agency. So as far as experience goes as well, there is an experience waiver on there. Again, we would be looking at, if it's an in-state license, we would be looking at the same license classification. If it's an out-of-state license, we would want it to be comparable to the license you are applying for, and we would want that to be verified as well. Exams. So we use PSI. So PSI is the company that conducts all of our testing for both the statutes and rules exam and the trade exam. So there is an information bulletin on our website, and this is going to list all of the reference materials for the statutes and rules exam. This also includes a link for some content outline and some reference materials for the trade exam as well. So like I said, this bulletin can be found on PSI's website or on our registrar's website as well.
Yeah, just to take you through the bulletin real quick, if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, this is detailing the Arizona statute and rules examination. So you can see number of questions. This is the number of questions on the exam is 80. There's a percentage required to pass, and the time you're allowed, 180 minutes. Under that, it's going to break down exactly where our questions are coming from for that exam. So there are 25 questions that will relate to our statutes. There are 10 that will relate to our rules, and so on. The reference list, it continues off the page, but it's going to list exactly as Maggie's telling you what references we're pulling those questions from. And Eric, as you pointed out, that is a lot of information for 80 questions to be required to be known. So yep, we're aware of that. We're cognizant of it. So if you go to psiexams.com, what you're going to do is select Arizona and then contractors, and that'll point you to all of the bulletins that they have for us. roc.az.gov/licensing-forms is going to basically provide you the same. You can see there, depending on what classification you're applying for, the bulletin's obviously going to change, and that's how you would find your relevant bulletin. All right.
Yeah, so as we discussed before, we're going to go over anybody else who needs to be named on the application. So for a LLC, we need to have listed any owners of 25% or more. All members, if it is a member-managed LLC, and all managers, if it is a manager-managed LLC. For corporations, we're going to need the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer or functional equivalent of these officers. We would need also the owners of at least 25% or more, as well as the directors. So everybody who is named on the application must be at least 18 years of age. And then we have tiered entities. So a tiered entity is going to be an entity that is owned or operated by another entity. So as you can see on this slide, if we have the red corporation is the applicant and they are owned by the blue LLC, then the red corporation would be considered a tiered entity. So if you are applying as a tiered entity, you will need to submit to us an organizational chart. This chart needs to include names and addresses of all owners of 25% or more. Any individual that owns 25% of or more, they need to identify those individuals by name and address on the org chart. The org chart needs to be signed by an authorized representative, and it needs to include the attestation that no person or entity other than those listed owns 25% or more of the application. The chart also needs to include ownership percentages for each owning entity and or individual. So we do have these instructions are also listed on our website as well for you.
Yeah, so what I'll point out here is that bottom right-hand corner. One of the biggest, easiest deficiencies on this piece of paper is that signature attesting to that no one owns more than 25% that is not listed there. It's a silly requirement, but it's one where we're guaranteeing that you're saying that there is nobody that you're getting off the list. Okay.
So for those persons who are going to be required to be listed on the application, similar to the qualifying party, we're going to need the following items. So we will need their name as it is listed on their ID, their date of birth, social security number, driver's license, and government ID. Again, this is one of those top 5 deficiencies. Most of the time when they are deficient, it's because they are illegible or they're expired. We will need your residential or business address, a phone number, an email address, the title or position, the percentage of ownership, and then the background check. Again, the background check is another one of those top 5 deficiencies. Background checks need to be submitted need to be dated within 90 days of when we receive your application. And anybody who is going to be listed on that application, they need to submit a background check.
Great, thanks, Maggie. 2 questions from Lucy. Do you provide any material to directly study to complete trade exams? Did I hear you correctly that you provide a book to study rules and statutes? So we do have a compiled book for statutes and rules, and that is on our website, and Jesse will put it in the chat. It's a link. You're welcome to print it out. And all of our exams are open book, so any reference material listed in the relevant bulletin to the exams you're taking are allowed in the test centers. We do not provide any material for the trade exams. Obviously, we'd recommend that you should obtain those relevant trade materials as you likely would want them for your everyday work, or if you were ever to, say, challenge a business official or a building official, you would need those books. So it's certainly something that we understand. It's not inexpensive, but it is important for you as being in the trade to have that material. Yeah. So just to recap, again, we issue a license to a business entity. That business entity has a qualifying party. That is the individual who has taken the exams and has the experience to be able to perform the work that you're applying for. So on the one hand, you have the individual who's in charge of performing the work or has the knowledge to perform the work. we require that individual's information, as Maggie covered, to include background checks and the photo IDs, etc. The other list of the other individuals that we also need this information for is anybody basically who's able to make a decision for that business entity. So it is the owners, the principals, anybody making or able to make a decision for the business entity, and the qualifying party must submit the information that Maggie's gone over. You can see it's outlined here as to what it is. I'm not going to read it to you again, but it's here. It's available to you, and we're happy to field any questions. Whatever we're talking about, deficiencies of it not of background checks or photo IDs or government issued IDs not being turned in. We know it's not purposeful on your part. It's you're likely not thinking that that individual would also need to submit the information. Background checks, I can tell you, they can take about 2 weeks for if you realize somebody did not submit for a background check and you've already applied, it can take up to 2 weeks for the company that they're going to use to clear that individual's background for us. So deficiencies are often not caused by you and they're not caused by us. It's usually a third party that we're waiting on and you're waiting on to get us answers. So again, what this entire program is aimed at doing is helping you avoid those delays and these deficiencies. Um, yeah, there you go. All right. So in addition to all that other stuff, there are a couple more things that we're going to require from you, possibly.
Okay, so disclosures. So any persons that are named on the application, we are going to ask that you disclose if you have ever been named on a license in any state that was revoked or is currently suspended, received a citation, or been convicted of contracting without a license, or has a felony conviction or pending felony charges that have not yet received a disposition. So we do have a disclosures form. Again, this is going to disclose to us if you've had any revocations or current suspensions, any citations, convictions for unlicensed activity, or any felony convictions or pending charges. It is important to note that failure to accurately answer these questions may be a material misrepresentation, which can lead to a denial of the application.
Yeah. So, Lucy, I see your question there, and it's there is no time frame on when we would consider background checks. The company we use does a lifetime of background check. So as long as the conviction is listed legally, then it would pick up on our background check. That said, and with Maggie's warning of material misrepresentation, it all sounds very scary. We don't mean it that way. As an agency, we have a philosophy that there are very few crimes that should actually prevent you from obtaining a license to be able to perform your livelihood. So on average, by 88%, a rate of 88%, we actually issue licenses to applicants with a felony listed on it. So by all chances, if you have a felony, all likelihood is that we will review it and we will still issue the license. Some great examples are a DUI from 10 years ago or a drug conviction from 10 years ago. Those sorts of things have no impact on your ability to perform construction work in the state of Arizona. If, on the other hand, you are convicted of fraud, stealing, identity theft of a nice lady in Sun City last year, then that's probably going to be an issue. We're looking for tie-ins directly to the industry that you're attempting to get a license to. That's going to cause you some trouble. But again, by an 88% chance, we're going to review that and say that it's not an issue. What Maggie's going to go over right now is first, required documents and then suggested documents. So if you do have a felony conviction, the required documents are required to be filed. Optional supporting documents, those are there for suggestions as to how you may, if you do have a more serious conviction or appears to be a serious conviction, where you can provide additional details or information as to rehabilitation. So go for it, Ms. Maggie.
Yeah, so as Jim said, having a felony conviction is not an automatic grounds for denial. However, if you, we will request that you provide us with these required documents for that criminal history documentation. And this is going to include indictment or the indictment or complaint, the court's findings or plea agreement, the pre-sentence report, any documentation of the sentence, completion of the sentence, satisfaction of restitution, and ordering or restoring of civil rights if these items are applicable. Also, those optional supporting documents that you can also send in is going to be a letter of explanation, just describing what happened, letters of reference, completion of any kind of treatment or relevant program, and then any personal or professional educational achievements that were that took place after the conviction. And I do want to note also that you can petition the registrar to review your felony history prior to submitting that application. And that document can be found also on our website under the licensing forms page. We will require also that you submit still those documents with that predetermination. But that is an option for you as well if you're, a little hesitant to submit the application because you may be worried about a felony.
Yeah, and so I am also the legislative liaison, so I follow a lot of the laws that are being passed by our legislature right now, and one of them that was just signed last week is prohibiting an agency from considering a drug conviction when determining a licensing decision. So how Arizona works is we have a general effective date of new laws. That's sometime, it depends on when the legislature actually wraps up, but it's about, I think it's 90 days after legislature wraps up. In either case, it usually is sometime in the fall. Or late summer, but at some point the registrar will no longer be even considering drug convictions as it relates to licensing. So your background check may show it. We would see that it's a drug conviction and not require these documents. The purpose of a general effective date is to provide us with the ability to update policies, procedures, and forms. So that's what we'll be doing. And as soon as that's complete, we'll probably implement it before the general effective date even, and no longer consider the drug conviction. So if that's something you're concerned about, by all means, feel free to wait. But again, you're likely going to get an issued license if a drug conviction is the worst conviction on your record. Okay. Bonds, the number one deficiency.
Yes, so bonds is currently our number one deficiency. So there's a couple different types of bonds that you can submit. There is a surety bond, the cash bond, or the assigned certificate of deposit. So your coverage amounts are going to vary based on your license classification and then also the estimated volume of work that is to be performed in Arizona. So when you are submitting your bond, a couple of things to remember. The bond does provide a specified amount of financial coverage so that a consumer can be compensated for their losses. You are required to submit a bond with the license application, and you will have to maintain that bond coverage following the issuance of your license. So completing the bond form is probably the largest deficiency. So there's a couple of important things. Making sure that you have the bond number, your full legal name of the applicant. This needs to include the DBA if you have a DBA. Also the license classification and description. So for example, on here, you can see it's a CR7 carpentry. Your penal sum amounts. So this needs to specify commercial and residential if you have a dual license that you are applying for. Your effective date and your signed sealed date need to be on there as well. And that needs to be within 6 months. The effective date cannot be a future date either. Also, signing your bond and making sure that it is notarized and has the bond seal.
Okay, so just to cover some of those, the CR7 is, if you're not that familiar with our classifications, that is representative of saying it is a dual license for carpentry. The C represents commercial, the R represents residential, 7 is the number designation we've provided to carpentry. And then what you're seeing off to the right is the penal sums or amount that you're required to obtain for each bond based on the estimated volume that you expected to perform as a business. We'll get into that on the very next slide, I believe it is, on how to determine what those amounts should be. But then again, the effective date. So we cannot issue a license where a bond is in a future date. So the date has to have been effective now, and it cannot be older than 6 months. So that golden period is not older than 6 months and not a future date. Then I think those are probably the biggest ones that we see, other than again the DBA and the bond number. You're actually going to get from your bond company. They'll be able to provide that to you. Okay.
Yeah, and then figuring out how much bond coverage you actually need. Jesse did post the links to the bond form as well as the bond page. So there is a bond information page on our website. You will want to use this chart to know the type. You do need to know prior the type of license classification that you're applying for, as well as your estimated annual volume. So for instance, if you can see on here, it says the license type is a CR7 carpentry. The estimated residential specialty volume is 200,000 and the commercial estimated is 50,000. So then the minimum bond requirement that would be needed would be the 4,250 for residential, 2,500 for commercial, coming out to a total of 6,750 for your minimum bond coverage.
Sorry, I was watching the chat rather than following you along. Catching up. So yes, if you apply on the online portal, you absolutely can upload that bond form. And as the meme is joking, just keep them separated, as it was exampled in the example on the prior slide of listing residential 4,250 and then on the next line commercial 2,500.
Yeah, so workers' compensation is another item. You will be required to be in compliance with workers' compensation. We will ask that you provide us with the policy number and the issuing company. You can provide us with proof of self-insurance if need be. So in general, when it comes to workers' compensation, if you have employees, you have to have workers' compensation. We will require that you submit that information to us. There are a couple of exemptions to this, and that is going to be a single member LLC without any employees, a 50-50 two-member LLC without any employees, or a sole proprietorship. If you have questions in regards to your workers' compensation, we would ask that you contact the Industrial Commission of Arizona.
Yeah, so workers' compensation law is extremely complicated. It's housed within the Arizona Industrial Commission or Industrial Commission of Arizona, rather. And so we're going to point you, if you have any questions related to workers' comp, or whether you need to obtain proof of self-insurance or otherwise a policy to handle it, we're going to point you straight there. So that's going to be your first and best step, is just to call them if you do questions. So first, Kai, you're asking, does a general contractor and also licensee also need to have a specialty license? It depends on the type of work you're going to do. So you can check out the scopes. The scope for general contractors typically excludes you self-performing plumbing, electrical, boilers, and swimming pools. Yeah, so HVAC, if you were wanting to do general contracting and HVAC, yes, you would need 2 licenses to perform that work. Or as a general contractor, you can, of course, subcontract to any of those trades. So if you're just doing HVAC, then that's just a specialty license, and you would not also need a general contractor's license. General liability is not something we're going to talk about because it's not a requirement within statute. I believe as a business, that's going to be something that you're going to want to think about personally and professionally.
So there are some additional documents that you may or may not need to submit to us as well. This is just going to be reliant on your specific circumstances. So one of those being a solar warranty. So a solar warranty is only required for certain classifications. And if you visit that license classification requirements form on our website, you would see that there if it is needed. So if you have any questions in regards to solar warranty or the requirements for it, please contact us at the licensing department. There are certain situations where a current licensee may want to cancel or inactivate an existing license upon the issuance of their new license. So these would be the license cancellation form or the license inactivation form. Those items, again, can be found on our licensing form page of our website. There is not a fee to cancel a license. However, the inactivation is a $50 fee. I just want to point out, canceling your license is a permanent action. It is a cancellation of the license, so we do not reverse those cancellations. So if you are going to submit that cancellation, please understand that you are canceling that license permanently. Prior to approving that, we will contact you, and remind you this is a permanent cancellation on your license, and then just get that approval from you as well. There is also a notice of disassociation or resignation of the qualifying party that someone may sometimes be submitting. This is going to be used to disassociate a qualifying party from an existing license. And for that qualifying party disassociation, there is no fee for that request.
Great. Thank you, Maggie. All right. Jesse, Jose is asking, do you need a specific license or does a painting contractor need a specific license? And if you cover that, I'll go ahead and take care of Bobby. Can you deactivate or suspend your license? So yes, so you guys are in the process of applying for your license. Once that license is issued, you do have the opportunity to inactivate it for up to 5 years, twice. So whatever your life circumstance or whatever the construction market looks like, if you're making that choice to suspend your license or deactivate it, as we call it, or inactivate it rather, as we call it, you would have the opportunity to do that again. You would file the license inactivation form, and that would allow you to drop your bond. You would not be required to hold your bond anymore, and it would also not toll any time on your expiration. So if you went inactive, it would pause time that's assigned to your license for up to 5 years. within that 5-year period, you can come back at any time and reactivate the license. Or at the end of the 5 years, you can go ahead and file that second re-inactivation to keep it going for another 10 years. Or you can do a myriad of things, but you can do it 5 years now and then work for 10 years and then file another inactivation 5 years later. It's really with whatever your life circumstance presents you. We are in the process of changing these form names because, frankly, they're just pointlessly vague and confusing. Cancellation form, that one's pretty clear, though. It is a form to cancel your license. Inactivation is one that I just covered, and it's how to inactivate your license. Disassociation or resignation. So that is if you're the qualifying party, then, or if you're the owner or a owner, if your qualifying party dies or is fired, then you're going to be filing the disassociation to get them off of your license. If I'm the qualifying party and I'm quitting, I'm going to be filing the resignation paperwork. It's all the same paper, but just different purposes for who's filing it. The reason you want to do this as promptly as possible is it's to keep your record clean, frankly. If you're the qualifying party and you're performing work for the construction company, or if you're no longer performing work for the construction company, but you are still listed as the qualifying party, compliance will still hold you accountable for any work performed while you're listed as the qualifying party. Equal opposite, if the qualifying party is out there performing work and they no longer work for you, but are still listed, and complaints going to hold that license accountable. So it's one of those where as soon as there is a change to the qualifying party, you need to update that record with that disassociation resignation form. Solar warranties, just real quick. In the state of Arizona, we do not have an endorsement or a stamp that we place on your license classification. The solar part of the solar portion is already included in several scopes of the classifications we have. So plumbing, swimming pools, and electrical have the allowance for solar. Obviously, not all of those contractors perform solar. If you do plan to perform solar, though, then the warranty is required of you to be filed with us. And again, there is an example on our website. Okay, fees.
So when you have completed your application, one of the final steps is going to submit your appropriate fees. So as we can see on this chart, different classifications hold different fees. So I just want to make a note that the application fee is non-refundable. So just to know a little bit about the recovery fund, the recovery fund is a form of financial protection that is provided by licensed Arizona residential and dual contractors to residential homeowners. So the recovery fund is governed by statute and is available only to claimants who own and occupy or intend to occupy residential property. So is a contractor's bond and the recovery fund the same thing? No, both are expressly intended to compensate a consumer's financial loss, but they are different. You can see here also, this form can be found also on our website. So it does list out like your application fee, your license fee, and your recovery fund assessment. These fees will change a little bit too when you go to renew your license as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, whenever you go to renew, the application fee is no longer applicable. So all you're paying is the license fee, and if appropriate, if you have residential or dual, then you'll also be paying the recovery fund assessment again. But renewals actually pay $100 less, so they are paying $270 on the renewal for recovery fund. So no matter what, the most expensive license you get is the very first one because of the recovery fund, and then the license application fee itself. Okay, so just to recap real quick, biggest biggest deficiency we have is bond. We went over the form and exactly how to fill it out. Yes, you can portal and use that to apply with the paperwork from there. We're also working behind the scenes to make that a little easier on you to actually open it up to bond companies to file the paperwork themselves, so that we can, instead of working with uh, new applicants who will never have to apply again for a license, we can work with the same 15 bond companies and make sure that they're filling out the paperwork that we require perfectly the first time. QP experience, again, what we usually see there is just not enough detail. So if you're applying for a specialty license, if you're doing HVAC, talk about the exact systems that you're installing, and is it residential, commercial? What are the exact details of the projects you're typically doing? If it's general construction, we're looking for more ground up type information. What trades are you actually managing? What work are you self-performing? Those details help us make an assessment as to whether you're actually informed and involved with the work that's being performed. Sometimes we do get the question of, well, I manage the trades, but it's from the office. What we're looking for is just information from the field. If you can provide us that you're managing those trades inside the field, that's what we're looking for. We understand some of the experiences may be accounting, but what we're trying to make a determination on is your ability to perform construction. So make sure to focus on that. Again, IDs and background checks, cover them at the same time. Often what we're looking at here is, again, and I've said it and Maggie said it, is just the individuals who must be listed on the license, and the qualifying party must have a valid or government issued ID, and background checks can be no older than 90 days. Testing can't be older than 2 years, and we provided the information on which testing is necessary. Some of that deficiency on the testing comes from you filing a waiver and the waiver not holding up, but we'll deal with those one-offs whenever they come. That's just kind of a recap of the top 5. To go over what happens after you submit an application. Celia, you're right on it. So you're asking what happens after you submit an application and how long do we have to make a determination? So first, statutorily, we have 60 days to make a determination. We have 20 days to review it to say whether everything is in there and everything's complete. And then we have an additional 40 days to say that, if you're thinking like experience, that the content's actually appropriate to what we're looking for. Within any of that time frame, we would have to issue a letter detailing any deficiency in there. If we did not meet those deadlines, then we would not be able to issue a deficiency letter informing you. In reality, so that's again statute and rule. In reality, we're reviewing applications the next day. So we're able to let you know pretty quick whether there's a deficiency. You file it today, we are looking at it tomorrow. On average, we issue licenses in 7 days. And so if everything is complete, then when we're reviewing it that very next day, all likelihood is we're issuing it that very next day. If there's a deficiency, then it just depends on what the deficiency is determines how long curing that deficiency is going to take. So again, on average, we're about 7 days, and if everything's complete and perfect, it's actually about 1 day. If not, then it's somewhere to make up that average, and so we're looking at about 15 days to get a license to you if there's a deficiency. No support documents or how that.
I will say also, oh, sorry. It's really important when you are filling out your application that your phone number and email address and your physical or mailing address are correct. When your reviewer does issue you a deficiency letter, they're going to call you, email you, and mail you a letter. So the fastest way for your application to get processed is for you to be responsive to your reviewer if there are deficiencies in the app.
Yeah, so Bobby, I'm following along and catching up. So basically, you were asking whether we assist or have any participation in placing liens, supporting contractors in enforcing liens. We do not. Um, they're there, they're available to you, but we are not. We do not have jurisdiction over consumers or your clients. We only have jurisdiction over licensees. Um, So yeah, no, we would not get involved with lien at all. If you needed any paperwork from us for some reason, I don't know what that reason would be. Whether a complaint was filed, maybe, then you would turn to us with a public records request. But typically, under normal circumstances, you contracting day to day, we wouldn't have any paperwork that you would require for a lien. There are many lien companies out there that specialize in construction liens. Um, and I guess I'm familiar with them because associations work with them a lot. Um, Kai, does doing HVAC with low voltage require electrical specialty license? In Washington, they make us have a specialty license for HVAC and a separate license for electrical. So Kai, the best if you're adding any electrical, then yes, you would need it. If you're just hooking it up, if you're just hooking it up, then no, you would not need it. Even though I'm not listed on an application, but I am the one submitting it to, they still have to list my info. No. So if you only list your information there at the beginning, whenever you're signing up for an account, and then the individuals who would need to be listed in the license app are those who have ownership or any stake in the company or are listed as members of the company and the qualifying party. So if you are not one of those, you would not have to be providing any additional information. Okay. All right. So what's next after this meeting? Um, I guess we're 7 minutes over, so apologize for that. We will be sending you a survey. This is a relatively new meeting that we're offering to the public and to you to help you avoid deficiencies and help expedite your obtaining of a license. We want to hear what your thoughts are. So by all means, fill out the survey after you apply, so that we get a good sense for whether it helped you or not this meeting. Second, what we'll include in that email is that YouTube link that I referenced at the beginning. This meeting is recorded and it will be uploaded, so you can watch it later. A copy of the presentation slides, resource sheet, links to the online portal demo. And then finally, what we're going to ask is whenever you are identifying who is filling out that application, we're going to ask if you attended this or if you watched the video on YouTube separate from this meeting. If either of those are true, please indicate that you did participate in watching the meeting or viewing it. What we're using, what we're doing there is we're using statistical analysis to see whether your attending this meeting has improved your chances of getting a license without a deficiency. So we're using those who indicate yes, you attended versus no, to see if there's a difference between the deficiency rates. All right, question from Stephanie. We are getting our license in Nevada. Can we do a waiver of the errors? Do you have a license in Nevada and you're looking to get one in Arizona? Is that what if you could just clarify that for me? Can we do a waiver of the, yes, okay. So you're looking to get a license in Arizona, you have one in Nevada. It depends on the classification. So just contact licensing after this. Maggie will be happy to help you. It depends on the classification because an example is I got a call related to the statute allowing us to waive. A guy in Colorado was performing flooring installations and asked, "Does the waiver apply down there?" And I said, "Well, are you the qualifying party?" "Well, we don't actually have a license up here. There is no license classification for flooring in Colorado. Then there can be no waiver for you down here. It has to be basically classification to classification. So just contact licensing and they'll sort that out for you pretty easily. And we do. Southwest states share a lot of the same licensing laws, so we look very similar to New Mexico, Nevada, and Colorado as it relates to classification. So all likelihood, yes, but just check with them.